Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this live events on stakeholder management. And so, warm welcome to all the ones that are joining us live and all the ones that will be watching the recording, because the record will be made available for all the people that sign up. So if you couldn't join us live, then you have the opportunity to watch the recording. I have with me my friend and colleague Matthias Manegold. We will ask Matthias to introduce himself in a moment. We have so many things in common with Matthias. You will discover them in a minute. Before we go into the introduction, how about if we find out a bit more about the people that are with us today? So why don't you tell us from where you're joining, for instance? I mean, both Matthias and I are based in Switzerland. I'm Italian. Matthias is German, but we are pretty much a global reach. So I think it would be nice to see which are from where the people that are joining us are connecting from. And as we find out some more about our audience, then a few words about myself. My name is Giuseppe, and I am the founder of CABL. I'm a professor, but most important, I am a practitioner. Let's say I worked in a corporate environment for over 25 years, and teaching has been a part of my job for a while as a portfolio career. Then it became a full-time job as of 2018. Then let's get to know a bit more about the audience. We're gonna share a few things. So we have Regina from Switzerland, Andreas from Switzerland, then Sergio from Italy, then we have Gerardo from Switzerland, from different parts of Switzerland though. I see at least people from the German-speaking part, the French-speaking part, and then we have Georgios that join us from Amsterdam, Germany, Chicago, Lausanne, then again. So, it looks that our Swiss network is playing well, but we have also people from a number of other countries. Let's try to find out a bit more about Matthias that is with us today. Matthias, can you say a few words so that the audience can get to know you a bit more?
No, sure, absolutely. Well, look, yeah, you said it already. I'm German, not that it matters, but I'm living in Switzerland already for the last 24 years. So a large part of my life, and I enjoy it a lot being here on the lake and in the islands. Now, a little bit of a background. I'm a senior consultant at Kinetic Consulting in Geneva. And besides, I'm lecturing at Schema, a private master's MBA business school in France. I do this during the winter semester. And all those other 30 years before, I was working in American corporations, the largest part at Procter Gamble, where I started to work as a young development engineer in a manufacturing plant. And I moved from there into project management. When this became also boring, I moved into procurement, and that's what I did most of the time. So now then I moved to Bacardi-Martini. I worked there a couple of years leading procurement and R&D, and then moved to Amsterdam, my favorite city in Europe, and worked for a company called Firmenich Global, leading in indirect procurement. And then when I had it, as I said, now I'm working as a consultant. I'm very happy and lecturing during the winter semester.
Fantastic. By the way, just to give you an idea, you may have spotted, if you know me, you may have spotted the number of things that Matthias and I have in common. We both arrived in Switzerland 24 years ago. We both worked for P&G. We both worked in manufacturing and then in procurement. And we are now both professor in the later part of our career. So you may realize why. If you remember some of the things that we mentioned in previous event, when you find similarities with people that you're interacting with, you're more likely them to like them more. So, there are plenty of reasons for me to like Matthias as we get started with this LinkedIn Live. Now, by the way, this is your event. So happy to see that there is already a question. Keep coming with question. We are there to address any of the doubt, question, ideas that you want to check with us. So do not hesitate. But before we go into question, maybe let me start, Matthias, with a more general question so that we put a bit the framework. I mean, what is stakeholder management and why it is a critical business process?
Okay, well, thank you. Look, maybe I start with a formal definition of what it is. Here's what I found. Stakeholder management or stakeholder engagement is the systematic identification, analysis, planning, and implementation of actions designed to influence stakeholders. Now, this sounds very formalistic and does not really describe what we are talking about. So let me give you what I think stakeholder engagement, stakeholder management really is. And let me start with a bit of an anecdote out of my life.
Sorry, Matthias, can I ask you to stay a bit closer to the microphone? I don't know if there is a problem of connection or is a problem of being a bit far away from the mic, but the sound doesn't come through perfect.
Okay. Let me see if it's better now. Is it better? I'm sitting very close to it. So I can make it louder.
Yeah.
How does that sound? Okay. Let me try. So starting with a bit of an anecdote, what stakeholder management really is. I started to work as a development engineer in the manufacturing plant in the south of Germany. And after 2 weeks in the job, I was invited by my boss's boss for my very first one-on-one. I was very excited. I was a little bit nervous. And when I entered his room, he basically looked at me, we had a nice introduction. He looked at my certificates from university, and he looked at me and said, like, well, this is pretty good, Matthias. And you can be quite proud of what you have achieved in these 6 years. However, this is only a small part of what you really need to master if you want to have a career as a manager in business. I said, oh my God, what is it? And then he said, the most important thing in a career and how to manage business is the ability to influence. I didn't really understand in the beginning what he really meant with that statement, the ability to influence. But I started to understand it moving forward and into business, and this wisdom, it was always in my mind to describe it. So, but now let me talk a little bit about reality and what it really takes. So we are going to be a bit more concrete. So let's assume you're working in a corporation and you're a procurement manager. And well, I could use any example. You could be a brand manager. You could be an asset manager or a commodity trading manager in a bank. You could be working in a consultancy firm, have clients to serve. It doesn't really matter, but let's keep on the example to be a procurement manager, because that's what I was mostly. So we are that procurement manager and refer to an example. So you want to develop a new raw material. What new raw material delivers innovation, it delivers better quality, it delivers better cost. And interestingly, it was brought by a supplier to us. So it was brought by a supplier to us externally, and that is a situation which is not the easiest. And I've seen, especially when innovations come from the external world into a corporation, which is by nature quite complex, and I've worked with one of those, it can be quite interesting to make that project a success. So what do you do to get all the stakeholders on board for such a project, to support your project, help you to succeed? So the first is obviously you need to identify who are your stakeholders. So who are my stakeholders? Well, in short, it's anyone who has some level of influence or some level of interest in your project. That's the first thing. But so it could be the head of another function. It could be your colleagues of the other function. Typically in procurement, it's finance, it's manufacturing.
Matthias, sorry, I have to interrupt you, but the sound is not good. Do you have headphones or even?
I do have headphones.
You have headphones? You're talking with headphones.
I do talk with headphones. I can switch it off.
Okay. And do you have a cask? Do you happen to have a cask or something else? No?
No.
Okay, let's see if you switch them off and if we have a bit, because the sounds goes in and out and it may be disturbing. And of course, your story so interesting that of course we would like to grab it all. So let's go back to the story. Okay, we were talking about what is a stakeholder. Let's move on from there. Yeah. Matthias, we cannot hear you now.
Can you hear me?
No,
You cannot hear me.
no. Very far.
Very far? Well, then that's what it is.
Then maybe you have to put your headphones back.
Yeah, obviously.
Is there maybe another area where the Wi-Fi is stronger into the piece? Do you have My apologies for to the audience, but we'll try to sort out the technical side. In the meantime, as we wait for Matthias to solve the technical challenge, then let me tell you a few words about what is coming up from our side, because remember the first word of Matthias. The most important thing, if you want to be successful, is the ability to influence. So just in case, influencing is one of the areas where you want to get better, then let me tell you that we do have our Influence and Persuasion Masterclass coming up. So we have Influence and Persuasion Masterclass coming up. It's going to be at Geneva Airport. So you can reach it easily by flight and by train. And it will be the 18 and 19 of June. So the link is in the chat. Oh, so much better now, Matthias.
Can you hear me better now? Okay.
Yeah. Oh, well, it seems so. Let's see. But we continue to go up and down again. So let's try. So just let me finish. Okay. So the masterclass Influence and Persuasion, you find the link. We still have the early bird rebate until the 22nd of May. So if you're interested to get a rebate, the rebates gets even bigger if there are more persons from the same company. Then check it out. Let me also tell you about another events that we have coming up, our webinar on emotions and negotiations. This webinar will take place, let me check it, yeah, the 31st of May. 31st of May at 2 o'clock, and you'll find the link also there. Again, if you are interested in this topic of influencing and negotiation, then you may also find this relevant. Branka Zai is a PhD specialized in this topic. She also worked with the BBC, and you may enjoy getting some insights into this. Now, let's see if we have a better situation from an audio point of view. So, Matthias, you were taking us through about what is a stakeholder, and then continue about this case about bringing into the business a raw material that was developed by a supplier.
Right. Okay, so I hope you hear me better now. I did my best with the technology here. Now, I was talking about the first step in managing a project is to identify the stakeholders. So we need to know who those people are who have an interest or an influence in your project. And the next thing is, once you've identified them, to map them. So map them to understand how high is the influence on the project of that person and what's the interest, and vice versa. Of course, there may be people who have a very high influence and a very high interest in your project. There may be people who have a very high interest but no influence. Yeah, understand, Giuseppe. So do you hear better now?
So, but okay, I think that's what we have. Matthias, let's go ahead. I think, that's, unless you have a different kind of headphones or a different kind of unit, then, that's we have to deal with. Okay, we'll just, if we're missing something, I will just ask you to repeat it. So, okay, let's keep going. So mapping the stakeholder.
So mapping stakeholders is very important. And the next one is sit down with them and listen to them. Understand what their objectives are of the project you're leading. Understand what they want to achieve, but also understand not just their business objectives, but also understand their personal objectives. We all are human beings, and we all have, besides driving the business, we have our own egos, and we have our own personal objectives. Understanding the personal objectives of those stakeholders is very critical. Then next one is use their perspectives. They all have different business perspectives. They have different experiences, have different expertises. use those perspectives to build bridges to other functions, to make them see the benefit of the project. And then last but not least, speak their language. I think you all heard this phrase already. It is important that you speak the language of your stakeholders. If you talk to a marketeer in marketing, speak like a marketeer. If you talk to a finance manager, talk the accountant language. If you talk to an engineer, you better have some technical appreciation. Okay. If there's any questions, so that is maybe an answer that I hope I could be heard.
Listen, Matthias, the sound quality is no good. I'm just asking maybe, a quick feedback to the people in the audience. Should we, can you understand and benefit from this, or should we reschedule it to another day and sort out the technology in the meantime? I think, it's important for us to see whether the audience can actually grasp what you say, or is too much of an effort. And then it may be better if we do it again another day where we have better conditions. So happy to get a perspective from the audience so that we decide what to do next.
Yeah, would be good to know if you even
exactly.
hear what I'm saying.
It's just one of those days, because when I started this morning, I had a call with a customer in Singapore and Teams was not working. So he always worked for the last 3 years, and this morning just Teams didn't work, and the customer was waiting, and there was no way to get it better. So it looks that the people are fine and they are clear. I can understand. For me, the audio is okay. Perfect. Then, okay, good. I think that the overwhelming feedback from the participants is that they can understand and it's understandable. So, okay, fantastic. Perfect. Okay, good. So, okay, you already gave us some good indication, Matthias, about what we should be doing, right? In particular, these ideas, understanding the personal objectives, right? Don't just stay with the fact-based kind of things, the company goals, etc., but try to go in deeper, because especially as you deal with more senior people, there are hidden agendas, there are ego, there are other kind of career-related matter that you want to understand. Then, use their perspective, speaks their language. Fantastic. Now, what are the good practice for effective stakeholder management on top of what you already mentioned? Is there something else that comes to your mind as a good practice for effective stakeholder management, or pretty much, what you already described are the key elements that you want to highlight?
No, there's a lot more to it, and certainly what I'm saying is not exhaustive, right? But from my experience, what is good practice on stakeholder management is, as I said, first of all, identify them. And then most importantly, don't forget anyone. We come to this when we talk about pitfalls. Then secondly, building a relationship with all those stakeholders, which is built on trust and on credibility. Credibility, you get them by demonstrating that you do understand their business. Trust, simply act at the level of integrity, which is impeccable. That's very important to have that. Then set up a governance structure for a complex project. The governance structure is very important in complex projects because things are changing, business dynamics are changing, and in this case, you must have a structure in place which helps you to resolve your problems and your issues. And secondly, it does also ensure that people continue to be involved, continue to be updated. So be on your toes. As I said, business is dynamic, change is constant, and therefore you need to, as a project leader, need to constantly communicate around those changes. There's one thing you should really avoid, and that is surprises to your stakeholders. Surprise is the one thing no one really likes in a project. On a going basis, if you work in a service function like procurement, I consider procurement a service function. Other functions certainly are service functions too. If you work in a service functions, one way of trying to understand how your stakeholder engagement works, how effective they think the organization is interacting with them, how good they're communicating. Use the concept of Net Promoter Score. That's a very good concept if being done by your organization on a yearly basis, once a year. You do understand where you need to continue to improve the way you interact, the way you work with your stakeholders.
Okay. Thank you. Now, maybe let me go deeper in one of the topics that you mentioned, Matthias. You talked about a governance structure. Can you give a few, some more insight to the audience about, what will you put in a governance structure?
But in the governance structure, if it's a project where multiple functions are involved, let's say finance and procurement, and different people work as the core team to deliver the project on that project, then those people they are facing issues, and those issues need to be resolved. Issues need to be discussed, and there may or may not be a constructive way of resolving the problem. So the procurement manager may think we need to do this. The finance manager will be focusing more on the cost. And the marketing manager focuses more on the client they want to choose or the marketing concept they want to implement. However, it may not be the one solution achievable. Then you need to know as a program leader where to go to and where to drive a decision. And that is typically the next level or the level beyond. In this case, let's take it will be the CFO, it will be the CMO, it will be the CPO, so the Chief Procurement Officer, the Chief Marketing Officer, the Chief Commercial Officer, who at the end of the day need to get together once they understand the problem, need to take a decision how the project can continue. That is very important, and it takes a lot of the load from the project team, and it makes the flow of the project much more effective.
Okay. Thank you. And now, you mentioned already one pitfall, surprises, right? One of the mistakes we made, people are saying that the audio is breaking up. Indeed, we know that the audio today is no good. We are sorry about that. And we'll try to do our best. And what I will also try to do is maybe reformulate on a more regular basis so that it may be easier for people to get it. Now, one of the elements that you mentioned as one of the pitfalls that people make in stakeholder management is surprises, right? So we want to make sure that one of the things we want to do is keep our stakeholder informed, that the things do not come to them as a surprise. Now, what are the pitfalls of stakeholder management? What are the other pitfalls of stakeholder management?
Yeah, very good. Well, maybe there are many pitfalls. We may be tapping into it. But I think to me the biggest one is what I called the hidden stakeholders. What are hidden stakeholders? Well, hidden stakeholders are those people who you may have not in mind when you mapped your stakeholder base. Someone who you think has nothing to do with your project, and therefore why spending time talking to that person and getting that person on board. But in reality is that person may have some influence on your project. Let me refer back to the example I've used. When I was a young procurement manager and wanted to qualify that externally supplied material from a supplier, and we had to commercialize, we had to qualify that material in a manufacturing plant to demonstrate that it can be produced, that it does deliver good quality, that it does deliver against the cost advantages promised, etc. And I was wondering why we didn't move forward. And we didn't move forward because we didn't have the resources to support it. And the resources missing were people from R&D, research and development. And I was wondering why, because in the beginning I thought they were all on board. And then I found out that one of the VPs, so a pretty high level person in R&D, was working on a similar material already for a number of years internally. I didn't know that. But that person was very upset that we brought this supplier material in, which was competing with his own innovation. So he has seen this as a risk to his own success. Once I understood it, I started to involve that person into the project success, but started to resolve the problem. But in the beginning, it cost us a lot of time to stay there, to keep the project on track.
Exciting, interesting story. Wow, that's a lovely example. So I think, for the again, there are a few people that are struggling with the audios. So, just let me reformulate. One of the typical pitfalls is not identify stakeholders. You have a hidden stakeholder that were not in your map. And indeed, lovely the example that what you were trying to bring from external sources was competing with one of the internal development of R&D, and that's why you ended up then having stakeholders that you had not identified that were fighting against your initiative. So yeah, excellent. Now let's see if we start getting some of the question, and let me start with Rekino. Ask the first one. You see a different style of stakeholder management when only Generation Z is dealing. More in general terms, any difference in according to the age of the people, right?
I'm not so sure I would want to move this or relate that to the differences in age of stakeholders, but there are different styles, different cultures, always in place. And each and every one is an individual with an own personality, with an own culture, own background, and with its own age. Has a different way of communicating, a different way of getting motivated. And of course, I think a good stakeholder manager does understand how to adapt to the different styles of the people, to communicate. Certainly, as I said in the beginning, speak their language. It's also valid to not only how to speak to different functions and the language they are used to, but also how to speak to different ages, generations in the company, being able to motivate them. I think it is important, but it's a question of being able to adapt to those different styles and speak their language.
Yeah. Maybe, I don't know if you experience the same, Matthias, but I have the impression that the younger generation are more uncomfortable with face-to-face discussion, and more prefer relying on written communication as a way to communicate with people. And of course, it becomes more difficult to connect with people if you want to try to only communicate in writing. So maybe if there are young people joining the call, and maybe you grow up, doing a lots of things, chatting on WhatsApp or doing things in writing with your friends, maybe reconsider if you are in the corporate world, certainly having discussion, ideally face-to-face or video conference with your stakeholder will certainly bring better results than just try to sort out everything in writing. I know that in writing is more comfortable, you have more time to think it, you're not under time pressure, so it may feel easy if you are the kind of person that maybe has a difficulty managing the emotion or whatever, but think it over. This may be an area where you want to try to do things differently. Let's take the question from Francesco. How has the ever-increased level of uncertainty that characterizes our society affected stakeholder management, and how should we address this important critical issue? So we live in VUCA times. Now, are the VUCA times having an impact on the way we interact with stakeholders?
Well, yeah, that's a very good question. Not easy to answer because it's a very broad question. But I would say, yes, we are living in VUCA times. And yes, VUCA times are impacting the way of how we do business significantly, especially as we've seen in the last couple of years. We had the crisis of COVID to manage. We had the war, the impact on inflation to manage in our supply bases. Of course, it does create a lot of uncertainty and a lot of ambiguity. And well, ambiguity can be best managed by communication, by keeping people in the loop, keeping people on board, making sure people do understand what needs to be done, why it needs to be done, and hopefully being able to motivate them to make them see the need behind, which makes people typically much more comfortable in supporting and contributing to success.
Mm-hmm. maybe also the time horizon may have changed, right? Maybe when we started business, we were more comfortable thinking in the longer term. And okay, if things are changing so fast, maybe the kind of planning horizon may be shorter, and as a result, maybe more frequent communication with the stakeholder may be one of the things that you may want to do to make sure that you continue to be on top of the situation. Let's take another question from Peter. How do you see the role of your external partner suppliers within stakeholder management?
Very good question. Thanks, Peter. Well, look, I think it is very important to involve external partners. Often, especially in externally linked functions like procurement, but like also marketing, it is important that you use the ability, the capability, the innovation suppliers bring in, and then of course using them, communicating with them, involving them is more or less the same process as with internal partners. Certainly, there's always the question of how far can I go when it comes to company internal IP protection, but in terms of how to make a project a success, the best thing is to involve them, to make them part of the success. Because at the end of the day, delivering an innovation for a company, be delivered by a supplier, is as important for both companies and the company itself. And then I think I could go into a very different field in my field of who I work with today as a consultant. I work all the time with external partners, and at the end of the day, involving stakeholders there. The process in itself, conceptually, is the same process.
Yeah. Now let's build, because the topic, the question from Peter is a very good one, and I think there is always a gap between what the external parties could bring to a company and what actually gets implemented. Maybe it happened to a number of people in our audience that are working in procurement, that you did a suppliers day. Then you asked all the supplier to bring ideas. You identified 45 ideas that could bring business value to the business. Then you go into implementing them. 1 year later, how many of those 45 ideas gets implemented? 0. So now the question is, how can we improve the link between business innovation and stakeholder management, recognizing that there may be a number of reasons, and you were mentioning before an interesting one, maybe the things that we're doing externally are competing with some of the things that we are doing internal. Just an example of some of the potential barriers. Now, do you see, Matthias, anything that we should be watching out for? How can we increase the amount of business innovation that we bring from external party, and how can stakeholder management be an enabler in this respect?
Mm-hmm. Very good question. And I think it goes into what I started to describe a little earlier, a few minutes ago, which is basically making those internal resources who typically work internally, making them part of the solution to the problem, making them part of the success, bring something external. Because that's what it is at the end of the day. As I said, we're all individuals, we all have our egos and our personalities. We want to see ourselves succeed in business. And hence, if I, as a procurement manager working with an external supplier, can make sure the R&D people, in my example, are the competitors of the external innovation, make those internal R&D people part of the solution when it comes to the external. And so take them, communicate them, and see how they can succeed themselves, how they can succeed or achieve their own business objectives, personal objectives, by working with me on that external solution.
Yeah. Which also brings us, by the way, to one of the classical principle of influence, right? Usually when you come with a solution which is already cooked and you want to say, well, this is an amazing meal, take it, then a number of people may resist. If instead, you cook it with the other party and it becomes your own recipe that you develop it all together, then of course, it's going to be easier for the other party to feel it, that they are part of the project, that they are part of the success, and they want to make it happen. Okay, fantastic. Listen, still on stakeholder, maybe let me take a different perspective. What should I do when my stakeholder have a realistic expectation? They want to have it great, fast, and cheap.
That's you.
So, sorry, again, I say it again. So, stakeholder wants to have it everything. They want it fast, they want it cheap, they want it of the highest quality. I mean, what could you do in those type of situation where it is impossible to get the expectation of the stakeholder?
Yeah. Well, I've seen this also in real life in one of my previous companies where I had I was leading procurement for a certain business unit, and our PS director, he thought that he understands procurement. He also thought that he could just ask for much cheaper, lower prices, much faster plan, and at the end, it was not realistic. It was not reasonable, what he has. But he was having a say. He had an influence on the project, so I had to sit down. That's what I did. I had to sit down with him. I had to talk through the whole project and make him understand where the complexity is. And I was very transparent, showed him all the data. And at the end, I made him part of the solution and the problem he self has created by asking him, help me with your good ideas, how we can improve it. Now, as I've described the whole project to you, you understand the frame, you understand the constraints. Now, help me. What ideas do you have in order to make it faster and cheaper? And we talked about his ideas. And in some cases, there may be an idea which is you have to project better. In some cases, just help to provide some rationale to that very different stakeholder, make him understand actually what I expect from the project. So making them part of the problem and making them part of the solution by involving them and asking them questions on how to make it better is certainly a way of addressing that expectation.
Yeah, perfect. And indeed, it's important indeed that make them part of the solution, that, they don't just say, I want that everything, but that they see what can we do. And maybe, sometimes the people, they don't even make priority themselves, right? I want to have the highest quality, I want to have it fast, I want to have it cheap. Okay, now you want to have those three things. Now, if you have to put them in order of priority, what will be first, what will be second, what will be third, then you start having an idea about what is really important and what is nice to have. And so where you have more flexibility in terms of making things happen. Still about stakeholder, there is Ahmed that asks, but how to handle cross-functional team? Think about SNOP meeting, sales and operational planning, right? Where you have maybe procurement, supply chain, manufacturing, sales, and they're all pulling in a different direction. Any advice for them?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it is the whole concept of stakeholder engagement is really absolutely needed here as a peak process. I think it's when all the functions sit around the table and talk about what can we do, what do we need to deliver against needs, and where are our gaps and how do we close the gaps. And it must be a multifunctional challenge to resolve. Important is to assign those accountabilities to each one in the team and make them work as a team and make them deliver against those projects and these challenges. At the end of the day, it's not different objectives. At the end of the day, the one objective for each one in the team is to deliver against the business requirements. And important is as a stakeholder engager or as a project leader is to make sure that these different functions do understand that their objectives are well met by the solution this team delivers.
Yeah. So I think that, if we have indeed a good sponsor that is crystal clear about which are the business requirements, this helps, to align the team and create a better base, to have a more healthy relationship inside those kind of cross-functional teams. If people are too much driven by hidden agenda, personal objectives, achieving their goals, etc., then you may end up, of course, in a less healthy environment where those kind of conflicts are more likely to increase. Now, we are at the end of our event, and maybe, Matthias, one last question. So we talked about project and stakeholder management. So if you could summarize maybe for all of us, how can I manage my stakeholders to make my project a success?
Well, I think, first of all, to understand the stakeholders' business interest and personal interest. Understand what's their interest in the project, what's their level of influence in the project. And then being able to speak their languages and provide a constant communication. So important stakeholders are always up to speed on what's the progress in the project and what are the issues in the project. I think that is key to make a project being supported by all the critical stakeholders. And if all the critical stakeholders support the project, it's also got to be delivered with success. The risk, as I said, is always if some people don't understand, are getting confused by some or the other reasons. Also by one of the pitfalls, as I mentioned, is if your own team members in your team are not able to understand fully the project objectives or the work processes, they may create quite some confusion. So keep the communication straight, open, transparent, and of course, honest. I think trust and credibility is key.
Okay, fantastic. Just, as a quick summary, right, some of the key elements that you want to retain from around stakeholder management, understand the interest of the people that you're dealing with, the public one and the hidden one. Understand, make sure that you identify, by the way, all the stakeholders. Remember the example that we mentioned before about some of the stakeholders that were not identified, that were then pushing against the project. Then if you identify them, it's easier for them, to make them part of the solution. Think about the level, as you map people, look at the level of support and the level of influence that they have. Then the other key element is the communication. In particular, keep them updated about what you're doing, open communication, and monitor the progress that you're making with them. And I think that, if you are positioning your function in the right way, if you're doing the right communication, if you're monitoring the progress that you're making over time with people, then you're more likely to have engaged stakeholders that work with you on your project, your initiative, or part of your regular category or business strategy. Matthias, thank you very much for all these ideas. Again, my apologies to the audience if we had some technical issues today. I think that hopefully you managed still to get the value from all the great idea that Matthias brought. And I wish you a fantastic rest of the week. Look forward to reconnect with you soon. Maybe just, before we finish, a quick reminder about a couple of events that you may be interested in, in case you are interested in influence and negotiation. Then we do have a masterclass on influence and persuasion, 18 and 19 of June, at the Hilton Hotel at Geneva Airport. You can reach it by train, you can reach it by plane. We have people coming from many countries all the time. Last year we had somebody even from California coming. So that may be a nice opportunity to connect and network. And other things that you may enjoy is our webinar on emotional negotiation that will take place the 31st of May with Branga Zai. And Branga will give us more insight into the emotion part. I will do more the link between emotions and negotiation. So thanks again. Look forward to reconnect with you soon. Have a fantastic week. Thanks again, Matthias, for sharing your wisdom.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.